Meaning the system itself. Are we doing? What are we looking for? Excuse me? So this one here is microservices. Gentlemen, make sure we're all stage C, correct? Just want to make sure. We don't walk in, walk out.
He's like, sorry. Yuki.
You can put it there. This is it, back in the classroom.
Myself and I'm like your secret shirt.
Oh, you did?
Oh, he has an end for them.
On the dog.
Oh, that is Devprime. Okay, all right.
I will be closing in store in 5 minutes. Two?
So, yeah.
3 o'clock.
Have you seen Thomas? He's supposed to do that. That's why he's going to be tonight.
Oh, I see. No, I haven't seen it. Did Kay? I don't know if she was getting in later or. I get overwhelmed by what they did. My old brain can only handle so much information. She's only 27. She's the same age as my daughter.
Something about
She started working with us.
That's crazy.
I'm just waiting the green lights.
That's my
That's
question.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, it says co-pilot with Devprime.
Okay.
Let's see when I see Prime. I think Coach Prime. Because
You're so Colorado. That's all you think about.
Stage C, microservices. Folks, do we know what session? Do you know what session you're trying to attend? Well, then I'm more specific. So 4 panelists it's only 3 right now.
Yeah.
So we're not listed on that. So the 4 p.m. one, you have the name on the map for your schedule.
Yeah.
It's gonna tell you which stage you're at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's downstairs, I'm
I'm just making
browsing.
sure, that's all.
Yeah.
Make sure you're not lost.
Yeah.
Make sure you're good. Yeah, good. Are we overlooking? I mean, I'm a skinny guy now, but come on now. You got some spectacles on, come on now.
No, I'm speechless. You're too. You don't need a break.
What's wrong? Incorrect.
Sir.
I'm in. You're coming in? We're about to start, that's why. Ready? Enjoy.
Mr. Saban, sincere apologies. Would you like to go on your union mandated break?
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to ApiWorld 2024, this is stage C. And I'd love to introduce our next speaker, Lucas Messina, the lead of Cloud Solutions Architect. Welcome, sir. The stage is all yours.
Thank you.
And huge round of applause for him, please.
Thank you, folks. Warm wishes from Brazil. Long trip. Well, I want to talk about a little concepts about the view to introduce later the Devprime and what we are building in Brazil and how fast we can accelerate your development, right? Just to explain a little bit about me, I came from Brazil. I have more than 20 years in IT market, developing applications, mostly with Microsoft.NET, Azure, and things like that. I have a lot of crazy stuff in the middle, right? I built my own RV, travel around Brazil, working remotely, etc. But that's another stuff. That's another topic. Let's start what matters. Every company is seeking to talk and to improve the digital transformation. Everybody's talking about it. But what is digital transformation? The adoption of technology by organizations to digitalize products, process, and increase value through the innovation. Everybody's looking for that. But how do we achieve a digital transformation, in fact? And how do we make companies increase the value of the companies, right? But before technology, we need to deal with many other topics. I will not go through all them, but we have to deal with almost all this stuff in every single company to make a digital transformation, in fact, right? And the main objective at the end of the day for all the companies is to enable a fast evolution and a fast change. Every company needs to change every day, every quarter. We need to disrupt what we have disrupted last quarter, right? So the main challenge is how to achieve this digital transformation in large teams and scale. We're talking about independency. Sorry about my poor English, right? Independency. We need to give teams independency to make whatever they need to make. We need to give them the ability to change the software as fast as they need and as much complex as they need as well. But then we have a lot of problems. How do we monitor different teams, different applications? How do we keep them working together? And how do we understand what those teams are doing, right? So I will briefly talk about a methodology to make the company understand how they work and what they need to do. To give to those independent teams the ability to connect with each other. So we're talking about, or we can talk about event storming, right? To those who doesn't know, event storm is not about technology. Event storming, it's about people. Friedrich Hayek says, knowledge is dispersed in society. So no one has all the knowledge. And since we need to have distributed teams, people working in different areas, we need to collect their knowledge and put them together so we can grow up our team and we can make the digital transformation, right? So event storming is basically one way to understand how the business unit works, how they connect with each other, how they interact with each other, and it's a methodology to put everybody in the same room discussing the same thing, but with different point of views. But why I'm talking about it? Event storming will give us a lot of ideas, a lot of views about how the company, how the project works. So every orange sticker here represents an event, something that matters to the business, not to the technology, but to the business. Like for example, an order has been created. I'm pretty sure if someone comes in this room and screams here, hey, a new order has been created, the market team will say, okay, I need to send an email. The IT team will say, I don't care about it, it's an order, it's not a technology thing. But probably the stock team or the supply team will say, okay, I need to dispatch this order because it has been created, right? So everything somehow starts from an event. And if we're talking about events, we're talking about event-driven architecture, because our solutions, our architecture starts when something happens. And if we're going through a digital transformation process, and we need to give the company and the teams the independency, we need to give them the ability to understand what's happening in the other room and how the other room will give us information to start doing our job, right? So, an event-driven architecture, just to put everybody on the same page, you have a system producing an event, basically screaming to the whole company that, hey, something happened into my domain. I am the order system. I'm announcing to the company that a new order has been created. And after that, other systems will interact or start the work or the job, right? That's a very basic and very superficial explanation about the event-driven architecture. I also bring here some important tips for event-driven architecture, and we can discuss this later. But for example, the main objective is to have a business-oriented events. Forget about technology. I started my presentation talk, hey, event storming is not about technology. Digital transformation is not about technology, it's about business. You need to make the business digital, right? So if we need to make the business digital, we need to talk the business language. And that also drives us to the domain-driven design concepts and etc. And we need to think, when we're talking about event-driven, in scale. Your company needs to scale. Your software needs to scale. Probably you will deal with thousands or hundreds of requests per second. And how do you scale them? So event-driven will give you the ability to deal with scenarios like this, right? I will not go through them, but we also have end patterns when we're talking about event-driven architecture, right? Some things we should not do because they make a distributed application just a monolith distributed. We need to avoid that. For example, leak events. To those who deal with sensitive information, banking, for example, right? You cannot come here inside this room and scream an event, hey, Lucas has passed his credit card 1, 2, 3, 4 into Walmart and he's paid. You can't. So leak events. That is the concept about don't throw sensitive information into events. Just to give you a very high level about anti-patterns when we're talking about event-driven architecture? Well, this sounds like microservices, right? We're talking about digital transformation, scale, event-driven. Sounds like we're talking about microservices. And when you have a large environment like this, where every single dot represents a microservice, how do you control the way they interact with each other? How do you control and you monitor the operation? And if something fails among all these microservices, how do you control and how do you know that? Remember, I started my talk explaining that we need to give to the teams the ability to change as fast as they need. We need to give the teams the ability to build up whatever they need. And if they are building things by their own, probably they are doing things with different patterns. Do you agree? And that is a major problem to most of the companies that are dealing with microservices nowadays. So, complex environments like this, with thousands, hundreds of microservices, sending and spreading messages on queues, reacting to messages of queues, it's a deal. It's a big, very big deal. So here is where Devprime comes in, right? Devprime.io. Our mission is to act globally, empower developers, and accelerate productivity. We don't want to replace any job. We want to accelerate the development. We want to increase the quality of the software we are delivering. We want to make the developer deliver more in less time and better, right? So probably everyone here faces the same challenges when we're talking about technology. We have talent attraction problems. We have complexity in technical debt. Every single developer faces problems with high coupling in their applications. A lot of you work, right? Everybody here faces the same thing, I believe, right? It's difficult to scale applications. When you need to get your cluster and make it run for thousands, millions of requests per second, it's difficult because applications in general are coupled with other components, or it's a monolith that is attached to one single database. And that one single database cannot scale as much as you need, right? So, where Devprime fits? We have a lot of layers in technology. We have front end, back end, APIs, etc., etc., etc. And Devprime has been built to fix one specific problem in the back end. Because there is where the heart of applications are. Everything needs to be processed. And this processing happens in the back end. So there is where the magic comes in. Devprime simplified the developer's onboarding. We create a modern architecture in seconds, and we can accelerate with ready-made components. So you can experience powerful code generation and reduce technical debts and scale your development with the continuous evolution of technology and new components. What I'm saying, you have literally production-ready features ready to be used. So that's the reason you can deploy in 5 minutes, right? So you say to me, okay, I have an open API project, I have a RESTful or gRPC project in my company, and I need to connect everything together. Devprime has those features for you. As I said, we're talking about microservices, correct? We're making distributed applications. So we have all the observability things inside, ready to be used with a single click. And I will show them working. Again, we're dealing with microservices. So failures will happen, right? That's like with a zero trust, when I'm talking about security, we need to say failures will happen. on microservices. And here you have a lot of strategies ready to, out of the box, to ensure that you have high scalability, that you have high performance, and you have resilience. What happens today with your application, for example, if your event broker is out of service for any reason? Most of the applications will stop, or will break, or will not respond the way they should respond to the customers. And I will show you how do we have a retry failure and what's the name? Resilience into the Devprime, right? You will say, okay, I use MongoDB, we too. I use Postgres, we too. I use SQL Server, we too. I want to use my own database. Okay, give us some days and we can make it to work with your own database. But you can literally use Devprime with all the major databases in the market today, right? So you can simply connect your application to that database, the code will be regenerated, and you will be able to deploy on MongoDB or SQL Server or whatever else. Even the Devprime brings out of the box to everybody event-driven architecture with a non-blocking API. One of the things I like most is the hexagonal architecture and the domain-driven design. I hear a lot of people say, I have domain-driven design in my project. And when you open the project, what do you have? A lot of folders and a lot of classes. And in most cases, those classes does not represent a real domain-driven design. They're just following some pattern someone created, but that is definitely not a domain-driven design. And here you have one CLI that is enforcing you to use the domain-driven design the way it should be. Avoiding, for example, one aggregate to connect to other aggregate directly, right? And of course, all these patterns brings to us, out of the box, right, a low coupling solution. So you will be able to deploy components, new services, out of the box, and with a lot of other features. One important thing to mention, Devprime runs everywhere. If you use Amazon, Google, Oracle, no matter where, you can deploy there, right? You have a lot of things ready to be used, and for example, you can simply deploy with a literally click of a button on your Kubernetes cluster, right? We can connect with a lot of features and services as well. Let's stop talking. I know everybody's tired of hearing my voice, so let's show the code. I think everybody wanna see the code, right? So let's show you up. How do we build up and deploy Devprime in literally 5 minutes? Right. So I will start. Everybody can simply download Devprime directly from your computer. Devprime.io. It's free. Everybody can try. I invite you to try. And here we have a CLI. Devprime brings to us a CLI that is the accelerator. It's from here that you will be able to build up new applications, ensure that your applications follow the patterns defined, and etc. So let's start. I will create here a new project. I will call this ApiWorld, right? I want to use, first, let me show you what we have inside this comment, the PNU, right? We can use different states and different streams. There's a lot of pre-made connectors that we can use to make our application, right? So I will start doing this demonstration using RabbitMQ, for example. So for a stream, I want to use here RabbitMQ, and state I will use MongoDB. Right. All right, we have a project created here. And in some few seconds, we have a project created following all the patterns and all the definitions of domain-driven design, hexagonal architecture, right? It's empty for now. If you look here into the domain, I don't have any folder here, right? There are two ways. I can create a class manually, or I can use the accelerator here. To create a new class. Now I have an aggregate and a customer here. The customer is empty. When we're talking about domain-driven design, the most important thing is to connect the technology with the business, or make the technology talk the business language. So here we can give to the developer focus. We can make him create what's important to the business rules. Let's create something here, right? I will create just properties. Let me clean this up. I will create some properties here, and this will be my customer, right? Name, email, phone address, and etc. Of course, we can create complex objects. We can create value objects. We can add much more following the domain-driven design pattern, right? After that, I will simply run a command here that is called, let me clean up, Devprime init. So now, our CLI is validating our code, everything we created, every class. Of course, now it's fast because we have just one class, right? But it will validate if we're not breaking the layers, if we're not calling things that we can't. And observe, Devprime has created 42 files that should be created by the developer. In normal projects, the developer needs to create 42 files and change many others to add entries, for example, to the API register, right? Dependencies, and etc. And that's all out of the box here. Let's go back to the code and see what happened. Right now, our customer has a lot of methods. How do we add a new customer? The rule is here. The code is yours. You can change wherever you want, wherever you need, right? We are just accelerating the development, but the code is yours. So to do, when you need to add a new customer, you will run these validations, create, mark it's new, process an event, and etc. So the business logic should be inside the domain, should be here, correct? All right. Now, I can simply run this project. While it's running, let me show you more. The domain is created. The application level is created. Now we have event handles. What happens inside the code when an event is triggered? For example, customer created event handle. Following the patterns and etc., we have the class created here and accelerated by the CLI, right? We have into the adapter layers, right? We have here the state. And since we are using MongoDB, we can see here the repository. And the repository is created, connecting the domain to that specific repository, adding items to the database, right? All right, the application is ready. And here, I believe, is the biggest value of everything. We're talking about distributed applications, many microservices, independent teams, and they need to have something in common. And in my perspective, is the observability. all the microservices, services, applications, and etc. should produce the same logs in the way a tool or a person can look and understand what's happening. So here we have an application that has been started, right? That has high dependency. In my case, it's disabled by now. It's connecting to the MongoDB application, to the MongoDB database, right? And etc. So this log is very well defined. Let's check our API. Observe, I literally typed some properties, and now I have one entire API created. And more than that, let's take a look to my MongoDB. I don't have any ApiWorld database created here, right? So let's start and let's create a new customer. Let's execute. Success true. How that happened? Devprime has a very well-defined observability. Here we can see every single step of the application, what happened inside. So here we received an HTTP request in this endpoint, right? Coming from this origin. Then we hit the application layer, domain layer, and etc. Everything. And observe here, MongoDB initialize. Devprime has detected that database does not exist and has created it automatically. It happens on MongoDB, on SQL Server, and anything else, right? Process the event and also streamed an event, right? An out event to a queue or RabbitMQ. And I literally typed some few properties, right? In 5 minutes, we have application running. And with this type of layer, and with this details of logging, we can put this application in production. There's a lot of things here that we can see to make this production ready. We can change security because this is coming inside our application, right? We can enable, for example, integration with Active Directory or Entra-ID. We can use identity server, and everything should be just a configuration on Devprime. So that's the reason I'm saying to everybody, you can literally deploy this application to production in 5 minutes, right? Let's see what happened with my database. Remember, I don't have an ApiWorld database here, right? And voila, database is here, customer is here, right? And I haven't typed one single line of query. But let's see what happened if something fails. I will open here my RabbitMQ and I will turn off. Observe in the backend that Devprime has detected that something happened with my RabbitMQ and started to recover from that failure, right? Out of the box. Everyone that starts using Devprime has this feature enabled. And there is. You will never see any failure in your application because the system is designed to make the things working. Let's try to make an API call here. And I will create a new record here, right? And I will clear to be sure and execute again. And it's success. But my RabbitMQ, remember, is turned off, right? It's off. Let's go back and see the logs. So here we had the neighbor saying, hey, secret break is on. I cannot recover, something failed, it's off. I got the request again, application, domain, all the layers. We can see what's happening. Again, the MongoDB, and in the end, we can see here a failure. That's not a failure, in fact, it's not a neighbor, but we can see that the out event customer created has not been delivered, right? And automatically, the Devprime has created a resilience layer to us. And if we look into the database again, let's go refresh. Now we have a Devprime stream registered there and waiting the recovery. If let me put this a little bit up so people can see. So if I start again my where is it? RapTMQ. In some few seconds, Devprime will detect the RapTMQ is back online, will disable the circuit break, and will automatically send the message to the queue. And the developer doesn't need to care about it, because this is on the framework. This is by design. Resilience is by design, right? And there is. Now we have here an out event, customer created, delivered to the queue, right? So out of the box, this is Devprime. And in 5 minutes, you can build up a new API and deliver this API. You can give to your developer, or the developers can focus in what matters to the business, creating business growth. We don't need to care more about the tech stuff. That problem is solved, right? Let me show you something that is a little bit more advanced. We are also building up our pilot, generative AI, right? So imagine the power of these features with an AI behind it. So I will simply start here a new project. I will call this ApiWorld. Of course, I have a prompt created, right? And I will send a message here, say, hey, I'm developing a simple CRM system and centered on customer registration and interaction history. Please respond in English. This is multi-language, so I can receive my domain classes in Portuguese or whatever language it is, right? And while this is thinking, this tool will generate to us a lot of classes out of the box and automatically. So from here, we can simply deploy an application production ready with a prompt. You will not find this feature in any generative AI out of there. All the AIs you see give you some classes, some few functions, right? Eventually some files, but not a whole application with this whole architecture, with all these features. All right, so what this tool generated to us? Classes, all that, not magic, classes. And empty classes, as you can see, no rules. But we have a customer, we have an email class that is a value object, right? Just classes. Let's go back to the CLI. We'll stop it here. And I will run here. In the CLI, I can see the projects I have created on DPX, on our AI tool, right? And from here, oh, I have a problem. I need to change something. I need to rename the folder because it will conflict. So from here, I will create a new project using the Devprime X, right? Again, I will use the state as MongoDB. And Devprime will make all the dirt job to us. All the classes will be created, all the rules will be enforced, and all the project has been created, and I haven't typed one single line of code. Oh, and it's important to mention, tests are also created. Of course, the test does not reflect the business at this phase, but as soon as you start changing your business rules or changing your domain, right, you should adapt or fix the tests as well. So let's see what we have here. I will not show you what the code for now. I will just start application, right? So I have created application from a prompt. I have started a new project from the prompt. Then now I'm running the project. And in some few seconds, we will see the API ready. So let's go back to my browser, refresh here, and voila. Now we have customer and we have interaction. And again, I haven't typed one single line of code. I will remove the database again to ensure that it's working well. Database removed. Let's create a new customer. Now the customer has a different format, right? And customer created in 5 minutes. Again, if you look in our MongoDB, here is my customer created again with some few lines of prompt. You will never find, or I don't know, at least at the moment, I don't know any other AI tool generating code with this type of complexity and so fast. So you can literally put this application in production, right? Let me show you something. Let's open the VS Code again. And while it's running, in a domain-driven design, the heart of the application should be the domain, because there is a place where the rules should live, where the business should be reflected on, right? So here into the domain, you will find the aggregates, for example, customer, with all the rules. You will find out the events produced by the customer. And when I say events, it could sound a little confusing, because we have internal events and we have also stream events, right? When we send out to other domain. But here we have internal events. So when a customer is created, means the domain is saying customer created, or the customer can be created. I don't know where this will be handled, but in the domain perspective, it's created. And we have in the application level, many different handles. So for example, when I have a create customer event, I will send this to the database, right? And when it's created, I will send this out to an event queue for a service bus, RabbitMQ, Google Pub Sub, whatever it is. So all this has been created by the AI with the acceleration of the CLI, right? That's Devprime. That's what we bring from Brazil, what we're building there. Let me show you up something interesting. I said all the time about observability, right? all the logs here have a very well-defined format. So all the applications that you deliver using Devprime will have the same prompt, will have the same output. And if you put this together with OpenTelemetry, it will be easy to see those things running. So I will start here, 2 different services that I have created before. So right now I have the order service that will produce an order, and I have a payment service that will pay, that created an order, right? Let's see how they interact together. The difference from this projects to the other I have created before is only configurations, right? I need to enable output, the output settings to send streaming data to Zipkin and SAC and things like that, right? That's the only difference. Let me show you up my SAC. So right now, the SAC has logs. I don't know if it's too small, but from different microservices. I have the order microservice, the payment microservice, all in the same dashboard. So if you have a monitoring tool or a monitoring team, they will easily find out what's happening among all your microservices. And if we look at Zipkin for now, we can see what happened into the different microservices I have created. And observe, ApiWorld's there. The first one I have created. The only difference is the export, right, to SAC. So right now, I will start the order microservice, as you can see here. And I will create a new order. I will call this focus again, customer tax, right? And so, order created. Let's go back to SAC. And here you can see that the order has, again, received the request, application, domain, etc., and then the payment has an in event, as you can see here. So after some milliseconds, right, we had an out event from order and one in event happening in payment. And payment started doing his job again. So that is the power of Devprime in my perspective, right? I'm just an advocate of Devprime. I'm a cloud solutions architect. I work for another company. And I'm here talking to you because I truly believe Devprime is a very huge tool and can make the difference in companies that are using microservices, right? So this is how the microservices interact with each other, right? If we look again here in Zipkin, you will see all the interactions the services had. And since we are using OpenTelemetry, we can see the message flowing between all the microservices. So for example, I have created an order, right? And the order has interacted with payment sometime. And here we can see all the interactions and everything else. Let me return here for a second. And let me show you up. So this is the power. How long the developers need, how much time developers need to create this type of messaging and logging and telemetry. So without typing a single line of code, I have an entire application sending streaming data, right, into Zipkin or whatever tool you want to use. And I can see the message flowing from one microservice to another. Everything here has a unique identifier. So if you got a failure in the screen and the customer sends to you, hey, I had this problem. Here is the idea of the problem. You can simply type this into any monitoring tool and you will find the trail from where the request started until where the problem happened. Line by line, one by one, and etc. Right? That is the Devprime. Well, I'm on time, I believe. Any questions for now? Oh, wow.
The first thing is about, it's only related to the CH or maybe we have a different programming language?
For now, it's only C#, right? But today you can deploy C# to any cloud provider, to Linux, to Windows, and etc. So for now.
But it depends on the company's requirement as well. They don't want to go towards the C#. Another thing is like, for example, something changed in the business strategy. Like for example, you created a DB schema like where you have name and email address, whatever. Someone came up like, okay, I want to add further one more thing, like for example, a date of birth, and how thing works. If you change all the files with a one single command.
Yeah, there are two ways to do that. You can simply run the command again and it will generate a new code, because Devprime has accelerated the development of one technology for now. So if you're using MongoDB, for example, it will generate all the classes to use MongoDB. And if you need to use SQL Server tomorrow, you'll need to generate a new version with SQL Server. So it will generate the repository layer again, right?
Straight into one DB, just add a new thing, like a new date of birth was not over there before that. Now it is. Just adding a new. For example, if you're saying I generate the whole process, I do everything, and then I will change some business logic so that the work is relevant. You don't know what you need. I change everything, and then somehow came up like, now I have to date of birth. Then the whole code, my business logic goes as well.
Yeah, Devprime validates for you if your change will break between versions, right? So if you're deploying something that will break, it will alert you and say, hey, okay, you're removing something that is important, you may run into a problem. So it's accelerator tool, it's not a decision maker. And you will have the ability to continue with that change or no. So it's on you.
But it doesn't have to integrate both things together, like something if I change as a business logic and then
Yeah, again, Devprime is just an accelerator. It's not a decision maker. It will alert you about the change, what's happening. You can proceed or revert the change if needed. And if, for example, I see projects where the solution runs into two databases. So they have accelerated two projects, SQL and MongoDB, but they merge just the repository layer. And they make the logic to decide based on settings if they want to go to SQL Server or to MongoDB. But again, Devprime is an accelerator, right? The code is yours. You need to change it and make the change by your own, right?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So, can we use Devprime to already existing and running .NET or C# projects that are currently deployed as microservices? For example, to refactor that into follow domain-dependent design or XML.
Right. No, Devprime accelerates projects from scratch. So you can reuse your classes as a structure to make Devprime regenerate whatever you need, right? Because the code that you need probably is not following the same patterns that are enforced here, right? And so it will be hard to make an acceleration tool to understand whatever everybody has and translate into this specific pattern. So you can reuse your classes, right? Bring the logic into the classes created by Devprime, and generate a new application from there, right? Sure.
How can you handle like proprietary logic and algorithms and like database schemas, like when it's like proprietary code and you're not
Right.
supposed to kind of like put that in an AI tool, like is there a way to handle that at the moment or?
Yeah. So Devprime behind the scenes is a .NET application, right? So you can bring on your own library to the application directly, because the acceleration is just on the domain. We will create the domain for you, accelerate the domain, enforce the domain-driven design rules, right? And that will generate for you. And behind the scenes, we are using Copilot. Not for now, but in the near future. Instead of using our Copilot license, we will give you the ability to bring your own Copilot license that will enforce all the rules you have on your Copilot, right? So instead of trusting in our Copilot tenant, you will use your own license and follow all your rules there. And the proprietary code is yours. Again, we're just accelerating the generation of code. All the code is yours. If you see my Visual Studio here, right? All the code is here, ready to be used by you wherever you want. Everything is here. There is no black box. Okay? Right? Just to finish my talk, I know you're tired about my voice, and I'm not the prettiest person to be here. When we're talking about microservice, right? Define a big data strategy. That's very, very, very important. And as we say in Brazil, in God we trust, everyone else must bring data. That's the most important thing to make the decision, right? Otherwise, we will pick up a monolith and transform into different microservices, right? That's the point. I appreciate, thank you, and feel free to connect with me. Okay? And I truly value your feedback if you can give me any